Hi everyone and welcome back. Today we are going to learn about queues, which falls under the description of data structure, just like with stacks. We can start now. So, a queue is a collection of objects that supports first in, first out. So, the main keyword that you have to remember here is FIFO. If you remember in stacks, it was LIFO, so last in, first out, which means the last element that you push is the first element that you pop. In queues, this is not the case. Here, the first element that you push is the first element that pops. The insert and delete operations sometimes are called unqueue and dequeue. Unlike list or arrays, so we said that list or arrays we access elements using index, just like in stacks, you cannot use index to access the elements, but in this case, the first element that is pushed is the first element that is popped. If we can see in a real-life analogy, in the supermarket, if you have noticed, the first customer that goes into the cashier is the first customer that actually gets served. In another real-life analogy, you may have printed a set of documents and you may have noticed that the first document that you submit for printing is the first document that actually gets printed. Okay, we are going to learn about two terms, unqueue and dequeue processes. We say unqueue when the data is pushed from one end, and we say dequeue when data is popped from the other end. There are two implementations about queues. First is just like with stacks, we use lists using append and pop functions, but the main difference here is that with pop you have to pop from the first index. Another method is using built-in modules, queue and dequeue. If you remember correctly, modules, I'm just gonna review them in the slides later, but it's important to know what they are. But first, let's see the queue implementation with list. So let's code now. Yes, just a minute. Okay, nothing happens, of course. I think I'm going to complicate this a little bit. I'm going to declare functions to view the queue. Okay. I'm going to declare another one to unqueue. So now we have to append an item, which I think I'm getting from the input. This way you also can go back to things you have learned. And now I'm going to dequeue. Now we have to pop, but as we said, the first element. This is very important. So it basically is just like with stacks with a few differences, like this one here. And now I'm going to execute the first function. Okay, we have wake up, brush your teeth, have breakfast, get dressed, and go to school. Let's suppose I want to unqueue do homework. Okay, we can insert do homework. Oh, yeah, nothing happens because I have to reprint it. And in the meanwhile, let's just also print the divider. Simple one. Certain item. So we said we want to do our homework. So good. This is the last item that we inserted into the queue. Let's suppose that I don't want to... okay, let's just remove wake up. We have to use, yes, the queue. And of course, let's see again the list. Okay, so this is wake up, brush your teeth, have breakfast, get dressed, go to school, do homework, and we notice right now that with DQ, wake up is not here anymore because it was the first element that was pushed into the queue, and it will be the first element that will pop. So this was one way of implementation. I think it was pretty easy and it could remind you also for stacks. We can go on, back to the slides. Okay, modules. So modules are used in order to divide a program into smaller chunks. This means that they are Python files that have declared functions, classes that can be used into other modules, or they can be also imported into our main program. In other programming languages, we may call them libraries, but in our case, in Python, we call them module, and they are pretty common. So we can use built-in modules, like for example, the one that we're going to use now, the QQ. We can use math, time, and many others. You can also search them, but we can also use custom-built modules. Okay, these are the functions for the queue module. We can see the maximum size is the number of items allowed into the queue. We can check with a boolean if the queue is empty or not. We can check if it's full or not. We can get and return an item from the queue. We can put an item and we can return the queue size. I want to implement all of these functions just to check what happens. Okay, first step, we have to import the module. So from queue we import queue. I want capital Q. Okay. What can we do here? Okay, declare maximum size. Let's declare our queue. Okay. And I want a maximum size of 3. Nothing happens now, but what do I want to do? Okay, let's check if it's empty. Okay, it's true. Let's check if it's full. Okay, of course it will be false. Sorry, my internet is not very good today. Meanwhile, we can check other functions. Okay, we can put items and get items. We can also check the size. Okay, let's now put items. I'm going to put 3 items using a for loop. Oh. Okay, I'm going to put index. Oh yeah, I printed true here because now this is full. Okay, so here we have full. I'm going to print if it's empty. Okay, what can we do? We can get an item from the queue, but be careful because if the queue is empty, we can wait until an item is available. So let's get the items. Get. Now we got the items and the full is false because we emptied the queue. let's check what happens if we execute get 4 times. So let's suppose we still want to get items. Yes, it goes into an infinite loop because, as we said right here, if the queue is empty, we have to wait until an item is available. So right now we have maximum size of 3, full is false and empty is true. And if we still want to get, it will cause an infinite loop. As you can see now, the program is not stopping. So be careful in these situations. You have to check the size of the queue. So we can check the size using queue.queueSize. Yes, now it's 0. Before it was 3. Right here. And yes, these were pretty much the main functions from the queue module. Okay, we can see the queue, which is pretty interesting and actually it is different from the queue module because in our case here we can retrieve from the last input but also the first input. So we can use pop just like with stacks. We can return the last element from the queue, or we can use pop left for queues to turn the first item from the queue. So let's see how we can execute this. Okay, we have to import here from collections, import the queue. Now we can declare the queue just like list. And what can we do? Okay, first let's start appending. I'm just going to use, as always, a loop of for this time. Queue.append. Let's just append numbers. Okay, nothing happens. Let's print what we have created so far. Yes, we have created the queue with 0, 1, 2, and 3. Now, let's check the difference between pop and pop left. If we use pop, I'm not going to print now, I'm going to pop, just like with stacks. You can see that the last element is removed, but be aware that we are still using a queue and not a stack in our case, but we can use functions just like with stacks queue, because if we import the queue, we can both access elements only at the beginning and at the end, but not in the middle, because we are not using indexes here. Now we can use pop left. And with pop left, as you can see now, the number 0 is removed. So remember the difference between pop and pop left. So back to the slides. Yes, I think that this is pretty much about stacks and queues, but it's very important to know the difference between those two. So if you remember, what are the main differences between stacks and queues? So stacks we have LIFO, last in, first out, and queues we have FIFO, first in and first out. How do they differ from list and arrays? So we said that in list and arrays we access the elements using the index. In stacks we can only access the last element that has been put, and in the queues, depending if we are implementing with a list or a module such as queue and dequeue, we can access the first element that has been pushed. How can we implement stacks? We said that we can implement stacks using lists and the functions such as pop and append. How can we implement queues? There are 3 ways, we said. So using built-in modules with dequeue and queue, or you can use lists with functions such as append and pop, but using the first index. Which is the difference between Q and the Q? The main difference is that with the Q you can only access the first element that has been pushed, and with the Q you can access both the first and the last element, but be aware that you cannot access in the middle. So I think this was a pretty easy topic and I hope you enjoyed it. We can see each other in the exercises and have a great time.